Welcome everyone back to my wayfinding series. So I love interviewing friends of mine who I think have great knowledge to help us on our paths. And today I'm so pleased to be talking with my friend Lisa Grotts. She's a 23-year etiquette expert. Her website is her name, lisagrotts.com, and her Instagram and other handles are always at Golden Rules Gal. And Lisa is very well known in the etiquette world and has been featured in the New York Times, the Huffington Post, Condé Nast Traveler, on and on. So it's so exciting to talk to her because I feel right now that we're in a very serious place with humanity not having the best of manners. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was this royal family rift between these two brothers. And Lisa, I read on your website the open letter you sent to Harry. Can you just give us your overview on what do you think would be the best way to handle this type of disagreement that these two brothers are having?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Leslie. It's nice to see you and your audience. You know, the tone of the letter was really, I actually got fed up. I was just so tired of hearing the whining and complaining of a royal of all people, you know, someone who really should know better. There are so many people in this world that are suffering. And I found that Harry's complaints to the press and in the book, I mean, I've read them all, the TV series I read the book, I've seen the interviews, and it's just so inappropriate to air your dirty laundry to the public. And that's what I took aim at. I mean, if they want to make money, that is their business. This is the USA. You can do what you want, but to dish your family and make them sound so horrible as he has and continues to, I just think it's a bridge too far. And at this point, I don't know where you can go from here when you've gone that far to your family, you know, and dish them.
Right. So in his book, he complained about his brother losing his good looks and about his receding hairline. This stuff is very low. And in my opinion, I've written a book on manners too for kids called Wiggins Learns His Manners. And when people hit below the belt and say things that are just outright cruel, as you said, the royal family should be at the highest level of good manners. And what we're seeing now is a very low level, low vibration. And it's very sad. I don't know how, as you said, can these two brothers ever repair this? How do you get over something like this when a sibling does this to another sibling?
Well, it's a great question. And you know, the saying, money doesn't buy manners, it also doesn't buy taste. And they have gone way too far, Harry and perhaps his wife or whomever. I think in the book, when I read those, you know, below the belt comments, I probably Harry, the prince, told his ghostwriter, because a ghostwriter I've read all about him. He's in the book. Perhaps it was just the ghostwriter's way of saying it. But even still, you know, if I were Harry, I would have been saying, there's no way you can say this about my brother. We both know that we have thoughts that go on in our head that we want to say to people, but we can't because we have a filter. And that's just not good behavior. It's just not what you say, and how you say it matters. That's even I say on my website. I mean, what you say and how you say it makes all the difference in the world. So they have gone so far, this couple, you know, right now, the last interview I saw with Harry was somebody asking him if, oh, are you going to your father's coronation? And he says, well, I don't know. And I'm thinking, are you even invited to the coronation? You know, I mean, after what you've said in this book, it is so hurtful and it is so demeaning. It's really shocking.
Do you think that the royal family should invite him? What would be the proper etiquette in this situation? Because this whole thing with this royal family, let me tell you, there are many families who have these issues. And what do you do to try to repair this type of thing? And would it be good manners for King Charles to invite his son, or would it be better for him not to have him there?
Well, I mean, I can't say what the firm will do or won't do. One thing I think we all know they will do is not comment on this. They don't comment. Queen Elizabeth didn't have one interview in her 70 plus years on the throne. So if Harry is waiting for that, for an apology, which I heard he said, I'm, you know, still expect an apology, or I'm hopeful for one from my father and my brother, it's hard to say. So here's my take on it. If his father and the palace does not invite Harry, this is just going to give him more fuel, right? Oh, spare two, the book sequel. See, we told you so, and then he can, take it a step further. So, I don't know what could possibly going on with him, with his brother, Prince Andrew, and all the, information we've heard about him. He's been stripped of his title, stripped, HRH, no more. So it's hard to say what exactly they will do, if they will have a conversation with Harry. I don't think they can control what Harry does at this point, seeing he is, kind of taken this to the end of the earth.
Well, Prince Andrew, he was stripped of his title for bad behavior, but he was still allowed at the funeral, and he hasn't been, but he didn't attack. His behavior was not great as in appearance ways, not good for the royal family, but what Harry's doing seems absolutely more cruel and more personally hurtful. And people what kind of people do this to their, what causes this?
Well, I think in this situation, we know that, or at least I know, Harry has lost his moral compass. I mean, there's no two ways around it. I think now it's about survival for him, and anything goes. I mean, he doesn't have a mainstay. What is his job? How is he going to support his family? It's been reported that security for he and Meghan and their children is up to $3 million a year. So I'm sure a lot of it is just selling, it's marketing 101. And I'm sure the publisher is loving all this attention because he's selling a lot of books, and the series, the Netflix series, I think it was the most watched in the history of Netflix. And now they have a deal to sign on for another series, and who knows what that would look like. So it is below the belt. It's beyond what anyone would say. But again, if this is done behind closed doors, it's a lot different. I mean, I have a sister, she's the spare, I'm the heir. When we have difficulties, we work them out together. We don't go on talk shows and we don't write books. So this has just gone so far. And I think it's hard for any of us who are normal and lead normal lives to go, how can he keep doing this and get away with it? Well, what's there to get away with? I mean, he's basically said, I don't want to be a part of the family, although he does want the title. So he kind of wants it both ways, which I find is very duplicitous. So it's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens, in the next few months.
Well, it has also put the entire royal family back in the spotlight, and the amount of press attention on how the King of England and his son William are dealing with this. In many ways, they're being elegant, they're being classy, they're not getting into a fight, a public battle. So in some ways, you being the etiquette expert, that is the classier way to go when these things happen, even if it happens within your own family, correct?
Well, that's correct. In fact, you're absolutely right. They have taken the high road, and I'm sure they will continue to do that. But even when the Duke and Duchess were invited to the Queen's funeral, there were even rules then. Remember, it's been reported that King Charles called Harry and said, please come and don't bring your wife. And that was in the book. And Harry was incensed. He said, Catherine is not coming either. None of the wives are coming. He, got down to the point, although Harry is still, incensed about this. Okay. So they went to see his grandmother and pay their last respects. But even during the ceremonies, there were reports that they weren't allowed to do certain things. So, it's hard to know. I mean, having worked in politics in my former life, what you read, you can't always believe because it's a lot different than what goes on in real life. But that's the thing, I think, with Harry, he's not understanding is that his family is not going to comment on this, no matter how much he needs it and he wants it. And he's out in this, visible therapy that he's having. It's not going to happen. So they are doing the right thing by not commenting, and I'm sure they never will. And even if Harry and or Meghan are invited, it'll be very interesting to see.
You're going to be there for the
coronation. I will. I'm going to
Yeah.
be there for the week covering it. And I'm compiling a lot of information right now. We didn't really know that much about Prince Charles, now King Charles. I mean, it was all about the Queen. And so I'm trying to read everything I can about the King. And there's a lot more to this person, I think, than we know. And I think we have to give him a shot. I mean, it's going to be hard. We've had the Queen of England our whole lives, and we won't see a queen for quite some time because there's Charles, then there's his son, Prince William, and then Prince Harry. So, the line of succession.
George would come next after.
Sorry, George. So 3 male kings. It won't be in our lifetime that we see another queen. So this will be, a big deal.
So astrologically, I think King Charles is going to surprise us and actually do a good job. So I think that his mother trained him well, and I don't think you could be under her tutelage and not pick up some of the ways that she delicately handled things. And when she died, one of the things that made me so sad was that she was one of the few people left of that generation that was more elegant than what we have now. And I wanted to talk to you, Lisa, about what I see happening all over the place, whether it's on the pickleball court or when I'm driving my car or in the grocery store. I'm noticing a real decline in manners and how people treat each other. And it seems that it's like jungle law out there. People feel like they can do whatever the heck they want. And I wonder if you're noticing this as well. And is there anything we can do to change this?
It's all about me. I mean, this is all, it makes me absolutely insane how people are so rude to one another. I thought after the pandemic, we sort of softened up, right? Because it affected everybody in the whole world. And initially it was like, oh, it's okay. We're all going to take care of one another. Let's be kind. And now it is just dog eat dog. And this year, the tone of my journals and my blogs have changed so much because I'm so tired of seeing self-centered people everywhere we go. As you say, they're picky, they're narcissistic, it's all about me, and they don't consider what the other person wants first. And as my tagline goes, Leslie, you can have everything in the world, but what matters most is your behavior and how you treat other people. It's important. Of course, we have to know which fork to use and when, and table manners and everything. But when you're gracious and you show compassion and dignity, it really is a game changer. And so I like that you use the word elegant, because years ago I used to write for Huffington Post, and I wrote a piece on, I can't think of the exact title, but it was this generation which is going away. And I really miss it. Their delivery and the way they talk with one another. It's just so different now. It's so slang and short, and I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, where we're going, except it seems like we're going down in terms of behavior and people not caring about one another in our world.
We don't have that many role models of elegant people. Like, I wanted to ask you, who do you think is the most elegant person that's living right now that we all might know of?
Well, I mean, certainly someone that just passed, which was my former boss, the chief of protocol of San Francisco, and Charlotte Maillard Schultz, and people of that generation. I would say anyone kind of 80 plus. I'm trying to think exactly, gosh, that's a hard question. I mean,
well, let me tell you who I thought of. I haven't thought of a female version one, but the most elegant person I can think of is Roger Federer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that one?
Yeah.
He always has good manners, and he doesn't scream and yell on the court. And there's like this cool kind of chill energy to people who have good manners. Queen Elizabeth had that cool chill thing. They're not overly emotional. And I think that there's something about actually not being noticed is, right, in my opinion, that's the height of good manners, because you're sort of in your own space, you hold your power. I always have felt that a whisper can be more powerful than a shout. And when people are elegant, they can walk into a room and not even talk, and you can feel that they have power. But we don't have that many role models for that. I was having trouble thinking of a female person who's younger, who we would call elegant. And when I ask young girls in their 20s and 30s, like, who's your role model? Guess who the number one person they say is? Do you have any idea?
Kim Kardashian.
No. Kate Williams' wife.
Okay. Well, yeah. She would be a nice role model. I mean, again, it's reservedness. And I know what you're saying. You don't always know what they're saying. You look at an Audrey Hepburn or a Jacqueline Kennedy, they were always very reserved.
Understated.
Understated in their dress, in the way they behaved. And I think we look at them now and go, wow, we really need that. And we miss that. And, less is more, the saying, less is always more when it comes to anything. And as much as sometimes I would like, say, Princess Catherine to speak, she won't, it's just not who she is. It's not her role. And so I think that's interesting that the generation of today said that. And I love that.
Yeah, so I just think we need more, both in the sporting world, the entertainment world, the music world. And I think that when I was working in Japan for 11 years, I've always said that Japan, I think, is the most elegant country on this planet. Have you ever been there to Tokyo?
I have, and I'm coming to you from Hawaii, where we're here on holiday, and there are quite a few Japanese that live here in Honolulu, and I could not agree more. They are so lovely. Everywhere we go, every restaurant, every poolside cafe where they work, they're just they're very lovely and very reserved, and that's
They're
just
reserved in that same quality of understated elegance. So what do you suggest people do? Like, I had something happen yesterday on the pickleball court where there was just outright rudeness with somebody, and I didn't know how to respond. So when we see bad manners, what should we do if we want to take the high road? Do we just back off and walk away, or stand our ground, or what would be the right way to handle a situation?
Well, I always say stay in your own lane. I mean, especially if it doesn't affect you. Everyone seems to get involved in everyone's business these days. But in a case like that, I would not say a word. What's it going to do if you react to this person? It's going to make him or her react even further. So when someone does something and makes a comment that's inappropriate, what I do is I acknowledge it and then I change the subject.
How do you acknowledge it?
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you feel that way. Or, whatever the situation was, like, okay, that's part of the game. Let's move on, and then you talk to somebody else about something else, just to kind of, it's like when you're shaking somebody's hand, instead of just letting go, just pulling away where they know it's obvious, you just let go. You just have to let go, because there's always going to be people like this, Leslie, and you deal with them every day in your business. And I get questions every day on my Ask Lisa site, just like this. And my experience is just let it go. Just don't give them more fuel and fire.
Because they also, with so many guns out there, you never know. They could have a gun on them and just decide to shoot you.
Are you kidding? It happens all the time. I mean, I'm in the car driving sometimes and someone will, come around me and swipe me and I just want to honk on the horn, and my husband's like, leave it alone. They could be carrying heat. You just never know in this day and age. I read this morning quickly on the news, there was another gun violence in Southern California where 10 people were killed. And it's like, this is just getting crazy. People are losing it. And I'm not really sure, to what extent, we can help someone like that. That's probably a mental illness. But every day, gripes with your friends, or you're in a situation with someone on the pickleball court, you just have to just walk away and just not make it a big deal.
That's one reason why I started doing this series, because I feel like so many of us have lost our way, or we feel very confused. I get confused. That's why I wanted to talk to you, because not only am I seeing it on the roads, on the pickleball courts, but with the royal family, but the other area where it's really bad is disagreements over politics. And how do you handle that within a family when you have a very different opinion than someone else and someone's trying to get mad at you for what you believe in? How do you handle that situation?
I think it's probably one of the hardest things to deal with. In fact, the things that you never want to talk about in public are politics and religion, because we can never agree on anything. And now we probably could add the pandemic to that, because there's, more than one side to that. So when it comes to politics, unless everyone that you're around has the same ideology, you just have to stay away from it. Again, it's kind of like your friend on the pickleball court. Some people like to talk about it to make people angry and make them, talk about it. Listen, I've lost friends because of this, where I've just had an opinion and then people, wouldn't call me. And I thought, it can't be because of politics. And I think it absolutely was. And I say, this is America, where we live in the US, not the USSR. We should be able to speak our mind at all times. But when people act like that, they just want to bring the worst out in you. And it's okay that you agree, but you should be able to agree to disagree, because that's just being elegant and being reserved and being kind and just being who you are. And it's okay to have an opinion. I certainly do.
Right. Now, do you do any work in the corporate world trying to teach teams how to relate to each other? Because it seems like you'd be great at that.
I used to do that. Yeah, I used to, when I first started my business 22 plus years ago, I started working in Silicon Valley. Well, I think things have changed. I think back then we weren't so hot about politics and people weren't so angry about so many issues. I just feel like there's a lot of anger out there and it's causing so many issues. In fact, one of the most important things I learned from you when I took your course years ago was, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but you know how you went through all the astrological signs. And I kept this piece of paper because when I was dealing with groups of people, if I knew someone's birth date, and I thought, okay, she's a Sagittarius, I would look on the list and say, this is how this person is, and these are her qualities and her traits. And it helped me to interact with that person better. And it gave me so much more insight, that I wouldn't have. Now, not everyone is going to do that and have that. So I think you just have to smile sometimes and just, walk away from the situation. Or when politics comes up and there's an argument, you just, again, you acknowledge it and change the subject, or you just keep your mouth shut, which always works.
Well, that's getting back to Queen Elizabeth. She kept her mouth shut. That is probably the answer for 90% of things that go on with bullies and people who are trying to act rudely, because there's a whole range of bad manners going on out in the world right now. And I really worry about children, because if they don't have parents or role models on how to behave, what's the next generation going to look like? As most of the ones that are older than 80 they're dying off, and that generation of people, they were very, very different. And I believe part of the reason for that, Lisa, was because they lived through a war.
I agree with you.
I think, believe it or not, I imagine that in the Ukraine right now, the Ukrainian people have exquisite manners with each other because they're all in it together. And we haven't had a common enemy. We just have enemies within our own country right now.
Right.
But I think unless you have a natural disaster, when you have a hurricane, as we've had many times here in Florida, if you don't have your buddies, your neighbors, your friends to help you, you're not going to survive, because you need water, you need help. So manners sometimes come from understanding that without it, we don't have support. We don't have what we need if something bad does happen.
It's such a good point. In fact, it's sad that I could not come up with one person when you said, who do you think has great manners? Because really, it was Queen Elizabeth. I mean, she taught us so much about what it was like to be, humble and discreet and godly and all these things that are wonderful in life. And she did it for 70 years. But I don't think it's just something like war, even though in the books that I've read about the Queen, she talked about how that absolutely solidified her role. She knew it was tough. And I don't know if you saw the interview with her when the UK shut down during the pandemic, but it was a beautiful talk, how she said, we can do this. We can get through this. She's been through it. She was a child, in war. But I think I find that people are different that have been through really difficult situations. For example, my niece had cancer. She had osteosarcoma for 3 years, and she died a year and a half ago. And that changed me. That changed my whole family on how we look and how we deal with people. It made us realize some of these things that we're worried about are just not important. It's not what's important in life. It's your family and taking care of one another. And that's the kind of people, or those are the kind of people rather that I want to be around. And I find that people who haven't been through something really catastrophic, you're right, it's hard for them to understand and to be more compassionate. And you always use the C word, compassionate. And I love that. I think when someone does something wrong, I immediately think, okay, I have to really be compassionate for this person. Why would they be acting like this? It's not right. It doesn't seem right. And it's just not how you are around other people in society and how you're supposed to engage with other people.
So even with Harry, we have to have a sympathy for him too. His behavior, one thing I am shocked by is that he's been in therapy, and I can't imagine a therapist guiding him through this and thinking that this is a good way to go. I just find that sort of unusual too.
Yeah, well, I'm sure has nothing to do with that. I'm sure it's money. I'm sure it's his publisher, and yeah. It seems like we are now his therapist. The world has become Harry's therapist because he's airing it for all of us to hear from what he's been needing to do for years and years. And I do feel for him, and I'm sorry that he is in this position because he did have, for a grandmother, the best role model in the world. And it's hard to watch him do that because I always thought, wow, the spare, he's adorable. I thought, gosh, he's got the best job in the whole royal family. I'd like to be friends with him. I mean, who wouldn't want this job, right? But unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. And I'm sad for him because we don't want to see history repeat itself with his mother. And it is in the worst possible way.
When Princess Diana died and when John Kennedy Jr. died, I was, because they're both my age, they were my age. I was upset, Lisa, and I was young, I was in my 30s. I was upset because I wanted to watch them grow older. I wanted to model myself after people who I thought were classy and elegant, who were my age. And when they were both gone, I thought that was a real tragedy for humanity because they both carried that kind of energy that we were talking about earlier.
I agree.
And it's funny that even in my 30s, I was sad that I wasn't going to get them to witness how they handled aging, because aging is another thing that you have to have good manners to do it gracefully. You can do it in a terrible way, and you can do it in a nice way.
It's so true. Yeah, I agree with you about Princess Diana, especially. In fact, I was in Hawaii when her car crashed in Paris with my mother, and we cut our trip short. We just flew home because we couldn't imagine anything worse. And we went back home 2 days later and we watched her funeral together. And it was so sad because she was doing so many great things in the world, and she was a good role model. So Harry had two great role models. He had two great
role models. And I thought that she really got her hands dirty. Princess Diana would touch babies who had AIDS during the time when nobody was cool. And that's the only thing that made me a little uncomfortable with Harry and Meghan's YouTube and Netflix show, that they talked about doing all this work, but it seemed almost like it was not as deep touching in the, like I call it, getting your passport stamped in hell. You've got to touch the world. You've got to touch the darkness.
You know, I covered the royal weddings of both Prince William and Prince Harry. And I remember being on the grounds of Windsor, and I have a great picture of Meghan passing by and all the hype that went into this. I was thinking, this is so great for this royal family. They're going to do so many great things. You know, William and Kate know their role. They are definitely the heirs. But these two could hit so many of the commonwealths that no one has gone to. And it seemed like they really enjoyed it from the few times that we saw them working. Sadly, it came to an end very quickly.
I agree. They had an incredible opportunity to be more like Anna. But nothing comes easy. You know, that would have been really, really hard work but meaningful work. And like I say, it's the story of your losing your beautiful niece, Charlotte, that when you have the darkness of life come into your heart, it actually cracks it open and more light can come in because of that. And that's what has to happen in order for people to grow. And so what's happening with Harry is like the reverse. Instead of cracking himself open, he's, trying to crack other people. And that's not the job for any of us to do to other people, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, it's a good point. In fact, when I saw them in Windsor and that whole week, I remember thinking, yes, it is going to be hard work, but look at your grandmother. She worked at it for 70 years. Look how hard the royals work. They work. I have their website where I go and it has their schedule, their daily schedules. I think they appear 300 plus days a year at things. And so Harry and Meghan did it for a year and then it became too much for them, or they wanted to do it, but on their terms. And that was the difference. It's like hard work takes work and you get paid when you work, not when you just have a title. You have to, you can't have it both ways. And it appears that they wanted it both ways and got very upset when they weren't allowed, they weren't entitled to certain things. But this is a saga that's going to go on, and I hope it, doesn't end in a bad way.
But there's also this whole thing about history, and maybe it's true that the royal family needs to be modernized in some ways, but there's also something really beautiful about the history of the royal family, the traditions, and honoring the past is sometimes a really good way to move forward. And perhaps they didn't really get a grasp on that.
But also maybe that's why we're enamored with them, because they never change. I mean, it's the same all the time. And, I'm obsessed with, looking at the pictures of this family, what they do, how they behave. And it's remarkable to me. I mean, how many of us could do a job for 70 years and do it well with very few missteps? I can't think of anybody.
So yeah, it's always sad when we lose an icon like that. There aren't many of them that land on this planet, so it's always a big deal when they go. But she lived a good long life, so
She did.
God bless the queen, as they say. So I have another question for you. I know on your website you have an offering for people where if they have a question, you can sign up for $20 and get 5 minutes of your time to have etiquette or family issue problems having to do with manners answered. Can you explain a little bit about how that works and maybe give us a recent example?
Yes, thank you. This came about actually during the pandemic because I could no longer go out and teach courses anymore. And the Zoom group courses, I'm not a fan of like a group Zoom course. I kind of like the one-on-one only. So then I thought, well, I had a site called Ask Lisa, just where people could ask questions, but now I've turned it into a role where people can be very specific with me and ask me questions, as you say, and they can just sign up online. I have regular office hours. And, it could be anything. Lately, it's been a lot of questions about weddings, but still related to the pandemic. Some brides are very nervous, say, like, I want to have all my friends and family, but a lot of them haven't had COVID tests. How do I deal with that? That kind of thing. And so that answer, I'll tell you right now, was very easy. I said, you just blame it on the venue site. You just have them send a letter out saying everyone that comes to this event has to have the boosters and the shots, or we can't, have you at our event. So something like that, where a lot of people just have so many angst about so many things that aren't that big a deal once you talk about them.
Right. And sometimes you just need the perspective that you have on life to just get that answer. So I think it's a great thing.
I'm like a therapist, like a heart healer or whatever you want to call me. I can give you the right answer or help you to get there. And you're right, they don't see that side of it. And it's very helpful.
That's awesome. Well, Lisa, this has been wonderful talking to you. I'm going to soon do a whole thing on more in depth of what's going on with the karma with these two brothers, because I think it's very, very interesting. There's always a lesson to be learned through any of these disagreements for all of us. So I can't thank you enough for joining me this morning in Hawaii.
Thank you.
All right. Well, take care.
Okay, thank you. Mahalo.